Welcome back. I know you get a lot of me and no Amanda or no Mr. Nelson. That's because we got them doing other things. They're so busy. They said, Mr. Craig, you don't do anything anyway, so you might as well do these. So here we go. So now we've done, we've graphed a point and a slope, and we've done that. Then we've taken a point and a slope and turned it into slope-intercept form. Now we're going to learn about something called point-slope form. This is a new way to write equations. It's called point-slope form. Well, when we did slope-intercept form, it was y equals mx plus b, and we said, oh, it's called slope-intercept form because you need a slope and a y-intercept, right? Well, if it's called point-slope form, guess what you might need? Probably a point and a slope. These mathematicians and their names. So here we go. Go ahead, write this down. I expect you to have written this down. All right, so what you've written down here is the formula for point-slope form. Notice I have a point, x1, y1, we'll talk more about that later. We have m as the slope, so the equation goes y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And a lot of you might be going like, why is this y1 and x1, which is, by the way, subset, it just doesn't mean y to the 1 power or y to the sub 1 power. It just means this is the first one, this is the first x, this is the first y. You say, well, how is this derived? So this is not some magical formula. What this formula comes back from was, and how it was derived, is from this equation. This is the equation that you learned for slope. The equation for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals the slope. So this is where this equation gets derived from. And let me show you how they did that. They said, okay, well, I have x on the bottom, I want to get the x sub 2 minus x sub 1 out of the bottom. So to do that, they multiplied both sides by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And they said x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And they said, okay, well, if I multiply this side by this, then it's this over that. And this simplifies to 1, and I get left with y sub 2 minus y sub 1 equals m times x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And this already looks a lot like this, doesn't it? The only difference is they got rid of the second point. Because what we've seen from the first one, when we took a point and a slope and we put it into slope-intercept form, we found that all we need is one point and the slope in order to do that. So instead of putting one point and the second point like we do when we find the slope, all we're doing is saying we're taking one point, and if we have the slope, we've got this. So I'll show you what I mean. Boom. Here's the equation for point-slope form. They're giving me the slope and they're giving me a point. Now I've shown you how to find it to solve for b, but here's how you can do it without doing that. So here's my equation, and here's the stuff I need. This is my x1, y1. I call it x1, y1 because it's the first point. It's the only point I have. And now I'm going to substitute it in here. So I'll go y minus, notice there's a minus here, so I'm always going to start off with that minus, y1, well my y1 is 1, so I'll put a 1, equals m. My m that they gave me was 3, and then it says parentheses x minus, I'm writing that down before I even look at what x1 is because there's a minus here, go back to x1, and I see it's a 2. And now I've written it in point-slope form, but it says simplify to slope-intercept form. And so to simplify something to slope-intercept form just means I have to get y by itself. And to do that, I'm going to do some simplifying. So I'm going to distribute here. I'll go 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 equals y minus 1. And now I got to get y alone. So again, I'm going to go, okay, get rid of minus 1. I'm going to go plus 1. If I plus 1 to one side, I plus 1 to the other side. I didn't put it to the x because that's not a like term, but constants are like terms. So this is 0. And I get y equals 3x minus 5. I've just written in point-slope form, from point-slope form to slope-intercept form. Now, if you liked what you learned earlier about just solving for b and then putting it in slope-intercept form, that's fine. But point-slope form is also useful, and some people find it a lot easier. So here we go. You try the next one. Okay, I'm assuming you paused and tried this. You are not a passive listener. You are actively engaged in this, so you're trying to figure out if you're getting it so that when you go to the activity, you're good to go. So again, they've given me a slope and they've given me a point. And I have this equation. I'll make it a little bigger so make sure everybody can see it. Okay, and so I just need to label the stuff. This is my x1 and my y1, because that's my first point. And so now I'm just going to go into the equation and substitute. I'm going to go y minus, before I even look at the y, because that's the equation here, y1. Well, y1 is -5, so it's actually a -5, right? We can change that in a second, but I just don't want you to forget. Some people think, well, it's minus, so I don't have to write that down. But the equation says minus, and the point is a negative, so it's minus a -5. Equals m, which they gave us as -2, parentheses, x, minus, before I even look up at the point, I'm looking at the minus. Now I look at the point and say, oh, the point is 3. And now I've written it as point slope form. Some people say, well, wait a second, you can write that better. You're right, I can write this as a minus becomes a plus, and this would be probably a more correct way to write. This is not technically wrong, but people tend to like to write it cleaner. So now this is in point slope form, but now they want me to put it into slope-intercept form because that makes it easier to use. So to put it in it's a slope-intercept form, I have to simplify and then get y alone. And that means, again, I'm distributing. I'm saying -2 times x is -2x. -2 times -3. A negative times a negative is a positive. And 2 times 3 is 6. And now I have y plus 5 is equal to -2x plus 6. But y is not alone. So I'm going to say I'm going to get rid of this constant by -5. And I'm going to minus the 5 to the 6 because this isn't a like term. But numbers or constants are always like terms. So this is 0. And I get y equals -2x plus 1. And that's slope-intercept form. So here was point-slope form, or this one as well, and this is slope-intercept form. You need to be able to do both. Okay, so now we're flipping up a little bit differently. Now they're saying, okay, I've given you this in point-slope form, because you know the formula is right here. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And say, okay, can you pull out the slope and can you pull out the point? And the answer is you should be able to. It can be a little tricky though. I know my slope because that's m. And there's a parentheses here, so this must be my m. So that's 3. That was pretty simple. But to find the point, I need to find x1 and y1, right? That's from the formula. But remember that this formula has negatives in it. So I look at x1 right here at -4. Well, there's a minus here. So I'm guessing that 4 had to have been positive. Because if I had put it into this equation, it would have been x minus, and they say, oh, I put the 4 in and it would be -4. But on the positive 2, the formula calls for a negative. So y minus y1. So if I had put in a positive 2, it would have been y minus 2. But because this is positive, we must assume that what really happened here was y minus a minus 2, which made it become a positive. So what I need to put in for my y1 is -2. And you can check that really quick. Here's the formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Let's see if I can resubstitute it in. I'm going to go y minus, what's my y1? -2 equals m, which we said is 3. X minus my x1, which is 4. Simplify that. Y minus and minus becomes a plus. So we did pick the points correctly because we were able to get back to the original problem. So in the next one, I want you to pull the point out and pull the slope out. Can you do that? Okay, I'm assuming you paused and tried to do this to see if you know how to do it. Again, for me, because I know I'm looking at this formula here, I'm going to try to put this on top of that for you. Find the slope should be straightforward if it's in point slope form. I'm like, okay, m is -2, done. Now I have to find my x1 and my y1. And so as I go through them, I'm going to look. So my x1 should be here. And remember, the formula says minus. But I look down here, I see a plus. The only way I could get to a plus is if I had done a minus 1, because a minus 1 would become a plus 1. So that means that my x value must have been -1. And then my my y1, excuse me, I look over here, I say y minus, I see a 3, so it must have just been a 3 because that's how it turned into a minus. And again, you can verify by substituting back in, and you can try that, but I'm telling you that's the way to go.